Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar on monetizing Microsoft Teams voice, network edge, and SIP phone service management here with Techland, Swoop Datacom, and Ribbon Communications. My name is John Ryan from the Ribbon Channel Marketing team, and we're pleased to have several people here ready to talk about how you can take advantage of Microsoft Teams voice and really grow value-added UCaaS revenues, trusted advisor relationships, while providing your end customers with service satisfaction. Today, our presenters are Rob Fitter, our UK Enterprise Senior Sales Engineer for Ribbon Communications. We have John Bennett, CEO of Swoop Datacom. We have Gareth Nunn, Director of Sales and Partnerships at Techland Systems. And we have Daniel Shepard, Business Development Director at Techland Systems. Before we get started, we just want to let you know that you will be able to get a recording of this webinar within 48 hours. We'll send it from my email address, which is jryan@rbbn.com. And additionally, you can submit questions via the question and answer window, and Daniel will explain that in just a minute or so on how you can take advantage of that. And with that, I'll now move on to the next slide, and I'll send things over to Gareth, who will get this webinar started. Gareth, I'll give you the slide control right now, and you can get started.
Thank you very much, John. And first of all, thank you very much for your time and spending it with us today. There's a strong registration on, and it's great to see so many people have taken time out of their day to focus on what we think will be a valuable webinar. So we look forward to taking you through the following as the agenda sort of states. I'll open up and then give you a little bit of a background on Techland, who we are, and the history and opportunities that we definitely see in the marketplace today. And then I will sort of introduce the strategic vendors that we work with and have done so for many years, and also for some new relationships, and take you through some industry-leading products, which are certainly part of the portfolio that we recommend for MSPs and voice partners in today's climate. So we'll kick off with Ribbon, Microsoft Teams, introduction into cloud SBCs, how that can help, followed by, again, Ribbon's platform, the next generation intelligent edge. So we put it, I won't go into too much detail. Rob from Ribbon will go into that in a bit more, and then we'll hand over to John Bennett from Swoop Datacom for a very interesting outlook on their product and what they see in the marketplace. Likewise, I'll hand over to Daniel for Q&A. And Dan, do you want to just explain a little bit about Q&A just now and hand back to me, and I can kick off?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Gareth. So yes, as John said earlier on in the call, we are planning on doing a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Don't, however, wait to ask a question then. If anything comes to mind during the presentation, feel free to use the question section on the right of the platform. Simply put your question in there, and I will be reading them out to the relevant speaker when we do the Q&A at the end. So with that in mind, I'll hand you back over to Gareth so we can get started.
Thank you, Daniel. And I'll just click into the next slide. He says, there we go, it's worked. Okay, so a bit of an introduction. There's many people on this session which I know and have worked with and had the pleasure of for many years, but likewise there's many faces on this call which I haven't had the pleasure of working with you yet. So Techland have organized this webinar today to provide partners with an interest within the agenda and the topic on how Techland as a distributor, which is a good starting point as the slides lay out here, what our history is, what our role is, and how we've helped partners of a similar profile to yourself over the years. So as a company, we've been around for quite some time, 1983. The business has evolved a lot, it's changed, and we would for the last 20 years of that is when we kind of cut our teeth into the VoIP market when VoIP was emerging. The last 15 years of that period, from 2020 back to 2005, Microsoft came on the scene with regards to unified communications. So we've been involved as a value-added distributor from way back when. So it's fair to say we've got the scars, we've got the experience. We've worked very closely with partners that have been along that 15-year journey as well. And some of those partners started off with 2 to 3 employees. some of those partners now are some of the largest unified communication voice partners in the world. So we were privileged to grow. So our motto here is, we are a distributor, but we do what disties do, and we do what distributors normally do, but where their value add expertise and forte is understanding the vendor's products extremely well. So we're talking about all the way from pre-sales, quotations, design, input into a partner's thought process, all the way through to shipping equipment, global distribution, global shipping. And then more importantly, certainly as we'll go into this in a bit more detail, is how we support that product. We offer a help desk as a service, level 1, level 2, across all of the portfolios that you hear about today, all wrapped up with professional services. Like I said, we've been working very closely with these partners over the years, 24/7 support. We've worked with a good 55 plus partners. There's one thing to say, we're a distributor, but we're not a broadliner. We're a specialist. We focused on a handful of products and become sort of the master, and we take great privilege of understanding and owning that product from a technical perspective, and that's been the key to our success. We're not a broadliner, we're not sort of diluted in our knowledge, we're very, very focused and specialized, and that's why we work with key strategic vendors in this marketplace. And that's kind of really reflected through our awards and reputation through the years, which has been a testament to the skills and working closely with our partners. So from a technical perspective, we are very much hands-on. I'm just moving to the next slide now. There's a little bit of delay, so just bear with me. So a lot of the products that you will see that we'll talk about today, we very much have full services wraparound. So you can take from Techland as little or as much as you want from a services perspective, which is useful to know because it can be quite daunting when you're moving into these new technologies, as how as a business you're going to invest into supporting these products. We're here to take that away from you, we work very closely with partners to skill you up. We can shadow installations for you to sort of onboard that knowledge in-house and then to build out your own service practice. But we're here to fill the gaps in between. And that's a key part of our value add here. The topics that we're going to talk about today are as follows. I'll let the guys talk about it in more detail, but from where I'm sitting, I've been with the company for 15 years. And throughout that journey, what I'm seeing now at the moment are the hallmarks of when the market, from our perception, sort of boomed. And that was kind of around the Skype for Business days, early days, where there was a huge demand and huge uptake. It got a little bit disruptive towards the end of last year before, with the announcement of Teams, and there was a little bit of confusion of which way partners were going to sort of build their value add and their services. But as I said, what we're seeing now is it's a perfect storm which has happened, because with the advent of Teams, a lot of that sort of specialist deployment internal knowledge, which had a costly investment, isn't always required now with Teams, which was a barrier for partners to move forward into the voice arena. That's certainly changed now, and we're seeing a lot of MSPs looking to move into offering Teams direct routing as a service, but other important home working solutions. So that's what our portfolio will focus on in the session, and I'll hand over to Robert shortly to start kicking off that particular session. But I think the key takeaway before I hand over is that we're here to help your business grow. We're seeing the hallmarks of a boom, and well, from a grow to exit perspective, a lot of people on this call today want to be looking in the long run how they can build their business accordingly. So we're here to help you on that journey. So I'll seamlessly hand over to Robert and pass you the helm.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Gareth. So yeah, I'm Rob Fitter from Ribbon, sales engineer. And I guess before we kick off into the detail of this, I wanted to give you a bit of background about Ribbon as a company. So the Ribbon brand was formed from the mergers of Sonus and Genband back in 2017. And then, in the interim, there's a couple of other acquisitions of Edgewater Networks and Nova Data, and that happened in 2018 and 2019, respectively. And then most recently, Ribbon has basically merged with ECI, who are a leader in packet optical networking technology. So they're very big in the the infrastructure for 5G and other applications for packet networking, optical networking. And that brings the total number of employees within Ribbon to over 4,000 globally, with customers in over 140 countries, and as you can see, a combined annual revenue of over $900 million. But where would you find Ribbon? You'll find Ribbon in basically the world's leading service providers. So in the UK, that's the likes of BT and Gamma. In the US, in over 350 locations within their defense department, and then just generally across the world in the largest banks, airlines, retailers, and other enterprise customers. And it's those enterprise customers that this presentation is focusing on today. So last year, we did a survey of over 6,000 different technology decision makers. And the survey was basically asking about their attitude towards technology generally. And then it focused down into what they were doing in terms of collaboration applications, and specifically Microsoft Teams, what their intentions were in that area if they weren't already using Teams. And the result of that was basically that it showed that over 50% of enterprises within the 20 user plus segments were either already deploying or planning to deploy Microsoft Teams. In that mid sector of 100 to 1,000 users, that was over 60%. So that was just outlining really the plans for adoption of Microsoft Teams. And then throughout 2019, you've probably seen all the press articles if you've not experienced it personally, but there was a lot, a ramping up adoption of Microsoft Teams within the enterprise space. But then with the coronavirus pandemic in the last couple of months, that's absolutely skyrocketed. And Microsoft's daily active users figures ramped up by 70% in 1 month. So basically you can see there, in March 2020, they had 44 million daily active users, and that spiked up to 75 million just in a single month. And I guess the so what from that is that in terms of those users now adopting Teams as their primary unified or intelligent communications client on the desktop, working from home, working remotely, they're going to need the capability of making and receiving calls to the PSTN, and that's basically where the session border controller comes in for enabling direct routing as a way to achieve that. So from Ribbon's perspective, we've got over 1,000 active session border controllers, SBCs, for direct routing, and over 400 of which are in Microsoft's Azure cloud computing platform. So I mentioned direct routing. Again, we did some research, this is again from the beginning of last year. In the enterprise sector, we found that 87% of enterprises were saying that they were going to favor adopting direct routing as opposed to buying calling plans from Microsoft. Those are basically the two ways of PSTN enabling your Office 365 tenant or Teams within Office 365. So let's look at the reasons why that is. So the first thing is from a commercial perspective. The calling plans that Microsoft offer are offered on a price per user per month basis. But the thing is, there's no scaling on that. So it doesn't matter whether you buy 10 calling plan licenses or 10,000, it's the same price per user. So very, very quickly that ramps up and becomes a very large operational cost. So that's a reason really for any significant sized enterprise. It's going to be far more cost effective for them to deploy direct routing. The second point is the fact that Microsoft calling plans are not available in every geography. They've released in 10 countries. There's a couple of special arrangements in Australia with Telstra and SoftBank in Japan. But if you've got a global enterprise, quite likely you're going to have countries where you can't buy a calling plan, and that points you down direct routing as a solution. You can run the two in parallel, so potentially you could have a hybrid scenario. And the third reason is, again, it's really what the commercial slant on it, but you could be in the middle of an existing contract with a carrier. So you could be in the first year of a 3 or a 5 year contract for ISDN, or probably more likely a SIP contract. And it could be quite expensive to actually get yourself out of that contract. So by using direct routing, that enables you to basically take that contract and effectively port that across to the direct routing infrastructure, and avoid the cost of exit. And then lastly, there's the case where you may want to or need to interwork to existing PBXs on premises. Analog devices is another major driver for this. The only way to connect those devices and systems into Teams is by using direct routing via a certified SBC. So I've talked about why, what's in it for an enterprise, but what's in it for a partner? And why would partners want to offer direct routing as a service? Now, it's highly likely that as a partner serving the enterprise space, you're already selling lines of minutes, PSTN access, whether that's ISDN or probably more likely these days, SIP services. So having the ability to offer direct routing as a service enables you to tap into that growing market of Teams users. And as well as Teams, there's also another cohort of users, which basically is the Skype for Business Online users. So they've grown up over a few years, but Microsoft has now announced the retirement of the Skype for Business Online service, and that ends in July next year. So, those users have got a very limited and defined timescale to move across to direct routing. So that's another potential market segment. And then more from the perspective of, I guess, customer retention, as well as, looking at it from a new revenues perspective, are these three areas. So a lot of enterprises have invested a lot of money over the, a number of years in their own unified communication systems, whether that be a Cisco Call Manager or a Skype for Business Online, Skype for Business infrastructure on premises. And within any most reasonable sized enterprises, you'll have functionality in there, like for example, contact center, which may have call recording on it as well for compliance reasons. So those bits of functionality, it may make an awful lot of sense to run that in a hybrid scenario in conjunction with Teams direct routing. So again, the only way to achieve that is by connecting the two together through direct routing through a certified SBC. You've got a similar sort of case as well for older PBXs that use TDM interfaces. Again, you can enable those with gateway devices. Analog lift phones are a favorite we come across on an awful lot of enterprises. It's a difficult problem to solve. Really, it's very expensive to change them out from analog to something else. So support the existing interface. And then there's also a range of SIP-based devices which can be gatewayed through into Teams and retained. So again, retaining the existing investment. And then lastly, there's another new revenue opportunity from a partner perspective, which is, as they adopt lots of Teams users, they may need, new devices, Teams native devices, which are based on Android, and meeting room devices, which are predominantly based on Windows 10, but there are some Android ones as well. But essentially, that's another potential new revenue stream. So deploying an SBC for direct routing, you can actually deploy this in a number of different architectures. As a large enterprise, it may make sense to put that in the core of your network. If you've got existing PBX there that's got TV interfaces, you're going to need an appliance-based solution to provide physical interfaces. If it's all SIP, it could be a virtualized SBC. And then we've got quite a lot of customers that have moved across to public cloud compute, so they want something that runs in that. So in this case, we're showing Microsoft Azure. And you've got a similar sort of story for the edge really as well. If you've got a larger edge site that has TDM and SIP, then you need a device that's scaled for that and has both interfaces. Or as you see over on the right-hand side of the slide there, if you've got a smaller site that only has SIP interfaces, but you've got some hypervisor resource running on site, then you could deploy a virtualized SBC instance. And within Ribbon, we have a wide SBC portfolio that covers all of those different deployment scenarios. They're largely split into two different areas. You've got the core products on the left-hand side, and then the edge portfolio on the right-hand side of the slide. So the cores are aimed at the larger session deployments, 1,000 sessions plus, supporting true high availability, very high calls per second rate. So you'll find those in the data centers or within service providers. And then looking at the edge appliances, you've got the SBC 1000, 2000s, which are from the Sonus product line, and then the Edgemarks, which we're going to talk a little bit about later, which you'd make a decision on which is most appropriate based on, again, requirement for specific interfaces and functionality that you need on those edge sites. From a virtualized perspective, you've got the Suite Lite, the software edition Lite. And the reason it's light is because it's very, very light on its requirements for cloud compute resources. And I wanted to say a bit about that, because all of these SBCs are certified for Teams Direct Routing, but using the Suite Lite and deploying that within Azure, you can do it very, very quickly, because there's now a quick launch wizard within Microsoft Azure. So all you've got to do is log into Azure, search on Ribbon or Suite Lite, and you'll find the quick launch wizard. And that allows you to set up all of the Azure, the resource group and the network security groups and the network interfaces, all that stuff, storage that you need to get a virtual machine running. And then once you've got the machine running, you can start up the SBC and then go through another 3-step configuration wizard, which gathers all the information needed for a Teams deployment and puts in a standard configuration. So that's a very quick and easy way to get yourself up and running, either for a proof of concept or potentially even for a production deployment. But from a proof of concept perspective, one thing I want to point out is that there are some trial licenses on there. They're in there for 30 days, so it allows you to set it up and try it out before you put any permanent license in place. And all of that is publicly documented at the URL you see below. So I've talked about, that we've got a wide portfolio. We've got SBCs that you can deploy in all different architectures that you would need for direct routing. But let's focus down a bit more into, if you were deploying a hosted service, from a hosted service provider and from an end user perspective, how does this look? As the slide said, what could possibly go wrong? Well, Murphy's Law says that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. I think he was quite a pessimistic guy, but as history's shown, he's been pretty accurate. So running these services across the internet, there's a lot of things that go wrong. It's public internet, we've got no visibility of it. There's multiple links, different places that can where it can fail. And especially in probably smaller sites, it's unlikely to be a SIP-aware customer premises device that's terminating that service. And then if a customer does have issues, probably the first thing you're going to know about it is when they call up the help desk and report it and say they've got a problem either with bad quality of experience or just that the service is down. And then because it's always running over the internet, of course, it's exposed to all the bad actors in the network who are, potentially trying to hack into your network or cause denial of service for some reason. And this, again, is borne out by some research a couple of years ago, looking at, specifically on the service provider community, asking them what their biggest technical challenges were. And they were lack of LAN visibility, the difficulties in remote troubleshooting, too many truck rolls or site visits from a more European terminology perspective, bad network metrics, and just the inefficiency of installations. We know how difficult it is to get people on site and the logistics involved there. I guess what's really interesting is, how does that actually affect their business? Well, long resolution times for incidents, high operational costs because of the need to actually send people out to site, and overall a high support call volume. And what that all results in, of course, is customer churn. And that's bad for the service provider, and of course it's bad for the customer as well, because they've had a bad experience and effectively they're going, well, this service isn't good enough, I'm going to switch to another one. So a bit of a busy slide, but the question is, how are we going to solve those problems? And what this slide is showing is, along the bottom, you've got a typical enterprise with some, a TDM, PBX, wireless network, and a wired local area network, and it's accessing cloud-based services. So not SIP trunks, and also unified communications, contact center as a service, those type of real-time communication services that we've been talking about. So how would an edge device solve these problems? So we start from the beginning of the service provisioning process. So imagine that you have a device that supports zero-touch provisioning. So you ship the device out to the customer site. That could be connected up potentially by the customer, or from a from a fairly potentially low-skilled technician to actually make that connection. That device then connects back into a cloud-based management system. downloads the configuration that's relevant for that specific site or scenario, and has made contact with the cloud-based platform. And that's effectively solved a few problems. Firstly, you've got the configuration implemented very, very quickly. It's consistent for that particular scenario. And you're already connected to a cloud-based management system, which enables you to remotely monitor it and make remote configuration changes. Now, the other thing is, because this is sitting in line with the connectivity out to the public network, then it has visibility of both the local area network and the wide area network. So that then enables the device to prioritize application flows going out to the internet. So in that case, we prioritize the UC or the contact center as a service traffic or the SIP trunk traffic over and above things like, say, cloud-based CRM or just general web browsing traffic, for example. But also, because it's got connectivity to those two, it can then report metrics, things like, for example, mean opinion score, what's going on inside and what's going on the wide area link of the network. So that is essentially exactly what Ribbon have done with our Intelligent Edge solution. So through a combination of edge custom premises devices and their cloud-based management system, so we can deliver zero-touch provisioning and some elements of service assurance with analytics and reporting, plus a security overlay on top of that. And then part of that service assurance capability is the ability to prioritize application traffic. So effectively like an SD-WAN solution, but a very, very competitive price point. There's two components that deliver this solution. You've got the EdgeView cloud-based management platform, and then you've got the Edgemark devices which go on the customer premises. So EdgeView supports multi-tenancy. Because it's what you normally expect from most, it's web-based interface, and it allows you to create collections of devices which you can manage with role-based access control, and then define policies for how they're going to be provisioned using that zero-touch mechanism. It also provides real-time visibility of the statistics that have been reported back from the Edgemark devices on site. You can set up policies that trigger on certain thresholds. So, for example, if your SIP connection is down to your SIP service provider, that can be an alert. Or if the MOS score, the mean opinion score for voice quality, drops below a certain threshold, again, that can raise an alert and trigger some actions. Now, this is what I think is really neat about the Edgemark and EdgeView solution, is the fact that it's got what is almost like the dash cam, if you like, of fault finding. There's what we call a ring buffer. So you've got a buffer on the edge device, which is consistent or continuously gathering logs and data from the customer site. So when that's triggered by one of those conditions, that's reported back to the management center. So what it means is, if you're trying to do root cause analysis on a problem, you've potentially already got the fault conditions that caused it, rather than having all the hassle and time and expense of either getting the customer to try and reproduce the problem or sending somebody to the site to actually make test calls. So that is a massive advantage. Now moving on to the devices, we talked about the zero-touch provisioning capability. They're basically multifunction edge devices. So they support routing, they're SBCs, and supporting full back-to-back user agent. They're all Microsoft Teams Direct Routing certified. And they've got this traffic shaping capability, which provides that capability to prioritize the application traffic, as you like. And some of them, depending on the devices, support power over Ethernet as well, if you need those kind of capabilities. So let's look at one of those in a bit more detail. So this is the Edgemark 6000. It's one of the latest in the range. It's based on the ARM processor, which gives a great price performance ratio. It's got a wide range of devices or interfaces that it supports, TDME1s, FXS and FXO interfaces. But interesting on this one, it also has a 4G LTE radio interface. You can use that wireless capability to provide, WAN and backup. And 5G is coming later in the year as well into the product. So that will be great. That'll be another great benefit for that product. And of course, it's Teams certified as the rest of them. So let's just look at, how you would use this in the sort of cases we've been talking about. So if you've got a 6000 deployed at the edge of the network on the customer site, you've got your SIP trunk provider coming in. Of course, it'll be providing application prioritization on that traffic, giving you that great quality of experience. And what the scenario that could happen here is if you lost the primary WAN connection, then it can switch over to using the 4G LTE connection as a backup. And one of the great capabilities also got is stateful SIP transfer. So that means that calls from the SIP trunk provider can actually be retained. Rather than dropping the calls, it can actually retain that call in process. So you can see that you've got a really good solution for providing a great quality experience for the end customers, and combined with that sort of management and monitoring capability. So in conclusion, hopefully I've outlined how you can deliver Teams Direct Routing using the Ribbon SPC portfolio, and then you can use that to differentiate this, or indeed any other UCaaS service, by using the Intelligent Edge solution. So with Intelligent Edge, you can speed up and lower the costs of service orchestration. That zero-touch capability, I think, is it takes on a sort of a new definition in today's world, probably more important now than ever. And the research shows that getting it right the first time prevents early life churn, and it's going to protect your margin. So it's better for service providers, it's better for the customer. And then the service assurance aspects of this can be positioned as another revenue stream. So you can deliver a managed service with remote monitoring and troubleshooting, configuration management, and then the regular reporting that that customers expect and demand from those kind of services. There's a security aspect to it as well, where you can dynamically or statically create SIP host blacklists, so you can protect against those bad actors in the network. So all in all, you've got a great overlay to differentiate your service from the rest of the industry. So with that, I'll hand over to John at Swoop Datacom to tell you about their capabilities that focus more on the end user devices.
Thanks, Robert, for that. Hi, everyone. It's John Bennett from Swoop Datacom. Just want to give you a quick overview, quick 10 minutes to give you a rundown of what we've been working on here for the past 5 years. And basically give you a view of how we see the market at the moment and how we can help you to grow your business to move into those markets and to isolate and retain the customers that you currently have today. So Swoop Datacom is a relatively new company. We built the business in 2015 with the ex-development team from Snom Technology and PBX and SIP. So we have a long history in the SIP space, building IP phones and IP PBXs. Worked with Microsoft since 2004 when they first released OCS into their development base. And we decided in 2015 there was a niche in the market for a service management platform that would help you to manage your assets, IP endpoints, and pull metrics and information from the network to help you support your customers. So since we set up the business, we've been rolling out the product globally. It's available more or less anywhere. We've got customers in over 90 countries. We've already provisioned and managed over 1 million devices, and it's rapidly growing across the vendors that we currently support. So we are predicting that we'll be up to 50 million endpoints in the next few years before 2025. So why did we set up this business? Essentially, we exited Snom and sat down with our competitors, and we decided we were going to evaluate the market at the time to work out what the prerequisites were for a service management system. So the key things that customers put forward to us were listed here. The main thing was ease of adoption, obviously. We see that IP endpoints have thousands of features built in these devices, and they're very complex to deploy if you don't come from this space. So one of the things that we wanted to do was make a universal GUI that essentially reverse engineers those settings into an English language format where you can easily read what the feature set is or the setting without having to get the user guide out and work out what that feature actually does. Flexibility, obviously we need to sit down with the key partners that were building these assets at the time. So we wanted a multi-vendor tool that was a single pane of glass view into the ecosystem, but also that had the same features across the board. So we've been working with 10 different vendors, who I'll explain a little bit later on. And we've been gradually building out their role with them to help them with what we saw was the next phase of development and how we saw the market changing and what features customers were requiring. And in doing so, we've basically built a relationship with those handset manufacturers so that we can basically give you the best service possible from our platform using their features, but also that we then manage that relationship so you don't need to start asking questions to vendors that potentially we already know the answers to, or we can help you to get resolutions very quickly. One of the biggest points that always came up across the board was security of these devices. So obviously toll fraud is a huge problem, and what we don't want is your customers seeing security breaches, especially in this climate with all the GDPR policies in place. We have to be very careful what information is available on the internet and what we're provisioning to those devices to ensure that we're not leaking any passwords or information, or rather you're not. So we've implemented many tools in this system, but the three main tools will make sure that you can confidently provision phones without any risk of those devices getting breached. We also noticed that obviously data is the new oil, as the world's telling me. So we want to give you access to information, log files, reporting, and analytics, so that you can get that information very quickly to your support help desk or your NOC, and you'll be able to then answer the customer's questions before they really get into any trouble. And it's got to be cost effective, obviously. So one of the key things is that we couldn't obviously outprice the market with the race to the bottom on the handset space. So what we tried to do here is drive as much revenue as possible back into the channel, so that you're not trying to make your revenue from those IP phones that are realistically being driven down by price fights at the moment. So what is the product? So ForgeServe essentially is a multi-tier white label platform that allows you to manage your services and your provisioning capability from one single pane of glass in the cloud. Now, one of the things that we like to do here is to build solutions that work for everybody. So it is a multi-tier system, and it will allow you to brand this platform as your own system, so that when you deliver these services to your customers, if you need to give them access, or if you want to give them access, you can do so, but the service deliverable comes out through your specific banner. It's multi-tiered, so you have all your customers in one place. You can access all their accounts, their information, their log files. You can see what's been provisioned and when. And the platform's entirely agnostic, so essentially you can pick up one of 10 or 12 different vendors of handsets where you can provision their equipment all from the same place using the same methodology, without having the concerns of knowing what those assets actually do. The system is fully secure. It is cloud-based, but we have all the mutual client authentication overlay with the devices. So we specifically work with the manufacturers to ensure that their devices have the mutual client authentication certificate, and we do validate those upon a provisioning request, just to make sure that any information that ever gets released does go down to the actual devices requesting it. It's a fully integrated service, so as a service provider or as a business, you can use the APIs that are available in this platform to push information into the system or to pull information out. You can tie it into your ERP system, and you can essentially use those APIs to make your life easier, so that you don't have any manual data entry, you don't need to be finding information, and it will pump out those reports on request as well. So the complete system, as it's deployed in the cloud, is available to you straight out of the box, so there's no real configuration to be done. We can have this platform up and running more or less overnight for your customers, and it is a true zero-touch mechanic as well. So there's no unboxing the phones first, pre-staging the phones. You don't have to set up configurations on the physical device, rebox and ship out. You literally plug the phone in at the customer site, or the customer plugs the phone in. It uses the manufacturer's redirection service to connect to the ForgeServe instance, and then it will provision to whatever call control platform you'd like to use. So I appreciate it's a Teams focused day, so it will provision to direct routing to the SBC. but it will also provision any handset to any chosen call control platform. To date, we've provisioned devices to over 60 call control platforms across the 10 different vendors. So these are basically the vendors that we work with. You get the same features and same functionality across the board. In general, there are some advanced features for specific manufacturers that do allow APIs, but across the board from a provisioning perspective and a management perspective, you can get all the same features for provisioning those devices with configs and files. You can also remote manage those devices, so that those of you that have those customers that do have remote locations that need management, especially in this current climate where it would be useful to have access to those devices that are with home users to see how the device is performing. If it has any issues, you're able to pull the log files back and see what's going on. You can log into the device GUI from the cloud platform. You can reboot the devices. Lots of features available for you to be able to manage those assets on your customer's behalf. Okay. So essentially, the call to action is to try to increase your revenue opportunity and decrease your overheads. So the beauty of this system is that it will allow you to actually do so. In deploying the assets, you don't need to send anybody to site. In managing the assets, you don't need to have those support contracts in place where you're charging customers to send out engineers to work out what's going on with those phones. It will reduce your customers' overhead, and it will obviously try and retain those customers for you. As much as we appreciate acquiring new customers is one thing, but retaining the ones that you have is also equally just as important. So what we've built here is a suite of tools that are going to plug in those gaps that currently exist in the market, where after you've deployed phones, you maybe don't know where the phones have gone, you don't know who's using them, you might not be tracking the warranty status, you don't know what firmware version is running. All these features and benefits are all accessible from the one platform, which you can access from Techland, and with the service overlay that we've built with the NOC Center, you're able to also leverage that support service where we will actually manage those client support calls on your behalf using the system. So you have visibility of all of your assets and where they lie and what warranty status they are, etc. But they also will support that for you as well. So you just need to pull the team in, and they'll help you with the support services to alleviate your overhead. So this is one of the case studies that we found was most poignant. So we've been working with Vodafone to build this system since we started the company, and obviously they're quite a reputable company in the telephony space, and they were unboxing the phones and pre-staging them and sending engineers out to plug them in. So that I think the biggest takeaway from here is that their productivity has increased 63% relative across operational expenses, but it also decreased overall by 72% compared with what their traditional methods were of deploying those handsets before they realized a product like this existed. Now, for service providers, obviously, they do carry a larger overhead if they're sending engineers out to provision phones, but from an enterprise perspective, it's also beneficial, because if you imagine you have offices that are all over the world and you need to deploy handsets with specific configurations and language files and all those different options that are available within the devices that you'll be provisioning, realistically, to do that from one central system, ship the phones out and know that out of the box there'll be a true zero-touch provision, and then be able to manage those assets to understand why they're provisioning and why, what files were sent, and to have visibility of the GUI even from a remote location is a huge, huge benefit from having the one central local system. We will be setting up a demo and opportunities to have one-to-one with testing the system and trying your own devices on them. Anyone that joined today will get also access to their own demo suite, and if you do choose to take the service, we'll be giving you NFR licenses for your own equipment in your offices so that you're able to familiarize yourself with the tools and get to grips with them. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thank you, John. That was great. I very much can see why it's getting a lot of interest, that particular product. Likewise on the Ribbon side. So before we move into the Q&A, just want to kind of recap the key points here within the webinar. Obviously, Techland have been around for quite some time. and we have the experience to help partners which are on this webinar grow. Likewise, the vendors that we're working with, both Swoop and Ribbon, are sort of reputable globally for the solutions that they bring to the table. Now, the solutions that they provide are ever more important than they were before, and we're here to help you as a partner get these products into your portfolio and meet the demand which is coming through from your end customers. I know that there's an end customer demand. To put things into perspective, we're servicing 2 to 3 leads a week from MSPs which are coming to us asking for SBCs for Teams, cloud-based. Their customers are screaming out for Teams trunks, and if they don't get those trunks from your business, then they're probably going to go elsewhere to get it. And so that's an important thing. And but likewise, achieving to deliver the service that your customers are requesting, with our support and our help, we can help you meet those goals, help you retain those customers, help keep them sticky, help keep them on board, stop them moving away. Scratch the itch initially, and then start to look at broader services that you can sell into them. So certainly that we've got the public cloud whereby you can deploy an SBC, host it as your own, or we can host it on your behalf, and you offer SIP trunks off the back of that into your Teams customer base. So you provide them the Teams direct routing. We've also got the Swoop Datacom provisioning platform whereby you can own and control your customers' endpoints and ensure that they're kept in the game, they're not thrown in the bin. Have that service management tool in there to have them re-provisioned into whatever call control platform that they need to be supported in. So just keep relevant. I think there's a common theme here of owning the edge equipment, owning the edge network, and likewise, hence Edgewater's big demand, whereby perhaps they don't, your customer doesn't want to take SIP trunks from the cloud. They want something on the ground. They want something on-prem. That's where Edgewater comes in the CPE side. So it's an SVC on steroids to a certain extent, because we've got all the bolt-in additionals there with data plane support, SD-WAN, and the big one for the MSPs and the service providers is the service assurance. The dashboard, the dash cam analogy is just fantastic. It records everything. So if there's an issue, just wind it back, see what happened. But in the meantime, all of that analysis and reporting and log files has already been sent to the engineer. So it's all about uptime. It's always about keeping the customer happy, keep them talking. So these solutions that we've put forward today, all wrapped around with Techland's hand-holding on the support side, break fix or professional services, software upgrades as a service. We can pretty much hand-hold you through this till you become self-sufficient, or we can do everything on your behalf. It's there. You take as little or as much from us as you wish, and we very much look forward to working with you going forward. Now, just before we all wrap up, I think it's Q&A time, just to see what has come in on the inbound. Daniel, are you able to share any questions?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Gareth.
So far?
We've had a few questions come in. It's not too late to ask a question as well. So if anything comes to mind now, then do use the Q&A chat function on the right of the platform. But we've had one in from Darcy. He's asked, will the slide deck be made available after the webinar? And the answer to that is yes, it will. We will be sending out to everyone who's registered today the archive recording link. And on that email, there'll also be a link where you can download the presentation as well. So if you have any questions on that, then do come back to us and let us know. Also, I have a question from, let's have a look. I have a question from Sholon, and this is directed at Robert. Can the SWE-Lite core be deployed in Azure, not from the marketplace, but by uploading the image? Is it supported?
Yeah, so it's currently on the roadmap for support later this year within Azure. At the moment, supported in AWS, but yeah, it's coming later, very soon.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you, Robert.
So just to chisel that question down a bit, was it the SWE-Lite or the SWE core?
SWE core, wasn't it?
It was the SWE core, yes.
The SWE core. Okay, excellent. Yep, it's on its way. The suite like today is obviously available through Azure. You can pretty much take a 30-day trial from that off the bat. And speaking of trials, if there's any partners out there that need to get moving with any customer requirements that you've got burning away, we can get moving on them pretty quickly with giving them access to a trial license, or depending on the urgency in the business case, then we can start to look a little bit broader than that. But we're here to get that sort of stimulated and up and running. So don't feel like that's a barrier from reaching out and requesting for that type of support. Here to help you grow. Any other questions, Dan?
Yes, thanks, Gareth. So we have another question in from Stephen. We are a local cloud services provider and recently deployed a SWE Lite free trial to test SBC as a service. However, we couldn't use our SIP line for audio conferencing within Teams. Is there any solution on the Ribbon direct routing for this? I think that one's directed at Robert.
I think what it, yeah, thank you. I think was referring to there is that if you want dial-in for audio conferencing, then you can't actually access that through direct routing, and that's a Microsoft limitation. So basically, you need to have the audio conferencing capability within the 365 subscription. So it's included within E5 as an example, or it's an add-on license to some of the lower tiers of licensing. So unfortunately, no, you can't use a direct routing access as a way to dial into audio conferencing, assuming that I've understood the question correctly.
Okay, thanks, Robert. That's great. So we had another question come in from Stephen, and this is directed for John. It's is ForgeServe a replica of Call Manager or PBX?
No, it's not. It doesn't actually act as a call manager or a PBX. It will manage the assets outside of any PBX. So it doesn't matter what you connect the device to. That's where it's going to pull its connectivity from. But we can provision any file to that. So we could connect to a specific PBX. Call manager is not something that anybody can connect to unless you have a call manager phone. If we are talking about the same Cisco call manager that I'm thinking of, from a Cisco perspective, we connect their MPP phones to any supported PBX, but mainly broad the scope for connecting Cisco MPP devices today.
That's great. Thanks, John. I have another question in from Dan. This is for Robert. What resiliency option is available on the Edgemark device? Is there a way to load balance?
Well, there is a way to pair Edgemark devices together. So we could share some information on that, because basically there's two WAN interfaces on each box. So you can create a scenario where you use a box in a pair to achieve that level of resilience.
Okay, that's great.
And hopefully that answers the question.
That's great. Thanks, Robert. And I have another one through for John from a gentleman called Mark. Does ForgeServe support native Teams phones?
No. Native Teams phones run on Android. So essentially they are an Android phone running an app. So there's no real way to manage those assets. Even in Teams, there's a small set of tools for the individual user to be able to change things like BLFs, for example, or choose their favorites to have the speed dials. But there's no actual device management tools for you to manage all your assets from a central location. So if you're an enterprise, for example, that wants to deploy all of your assets in multiple countries and manage all those from one central location, then you'd need to use the Ribbon SBC, register the devices with direct routing, and use the 3-pip phones. So any of the Polycom, Yealink, or audio codes, IP handsets that are link certified on the 3-pip program will work, but anything that's native Teams, it just connects via the app. So essentially it's you logging into the app that runs on the phone. So there is no tools for anybody, that even the manufacturers of the phones have no tools to manage their own assets. So the key thing there is if you do have an existing estate of customers that have 3 PIP phones, then we can manage those and we can help the customer retain those assets they've already paid for and connect them to Teams. But if you buy native Teams phones, then you have to be aware that they're going to be out in the wild on their own, and there's no central management system for all your assets by group. So if you wanted to firmware update by group on location or specific rooms or offices, none of that feature or functionality exists. You will be going out to site and essentially managing them manually.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, John. Okay, we have one more question in from Dan. Is the MOS score the average score for the whole call, incremental period of the call? Can you set alerts based on thresholds? Example, 20% of the call in a time period, encountering a good score? That one's for Robert.
Yeah, good question. I don't actually know. The examples that I've seen configured so far are based on, falling below a threshold for specific calls. So I'll have to, apologies, I've got some information from one of my colleagues. So yes, you can set some thresholds based on a 10-second interval is what I'm being updated on. So let me, I can come back to you with some more detail about the granularity in terms of how you can actually configure that.
Okay, thanks, Robert. We'll get back to you on that one, Dan. So we do have a couple more questions, but we are coming up to the hour. So with that in mind, if we haven't been able to answer your question on the call today, we will get back to you afterwards. A representative from Techland will be in touch. So with that in mind, I'll hand back over to John to close today's call.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Daniel. Really appreciate you handling the question and answers today. And I'm really pleased with how this webinar went overall. Lots of great content from all the companies and lots of great questions as well. As Daniel mentioned, we were not able to get to all your questions, but that's not a problem. We'll make sure that we will get back to you at least by the end of this week with a response. So please be on the lookout for that. In addition, you will, as we mentioned, you will get the webinar replay link as well as a replay to the slide deck. So please enjoy that as you continue to explore your options regarding Microsoft Teams. And we're here to help. We're here. We're happy to help you out and really bring forward great Microsoft Teams offers. Gareth, do you have any final words to say, or John, or Robert, Daniel, anyone here?
Just a big thank you for everyone spending their time with us today, and we really look forward to sort of developing and fostering any new relationships. Keep the questions coming. If you need any support, let us know, and look forward to working with you. But thanks for everybody else on the call. Great content, great contribution, much appreciated.
Great, very good. All right, thanks everyone. Thank you again to Robert, John, Daniel, and Gareth, and we'll all talk soon. Have a good day.
Okay, cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.